All right, good morning, guys. 45 minutes after the hour on this Wednesday. Hope you are all doing well. Welcome to Storm Talk. Yeah, a little bit of storm action to talk about. We'll be covering that today, as well as the heat and, of course, the tropics and how that still could play a storyline, at least in an indirect way, into the long term. Good morning, everyone. A lot of you watch on YouTube. Who was first today on YouTube? I didn't get a chance to check and see. Kevin. In the Taylor Berry neighborhood. All right, Kevin, congrats. You've made it on board. Don't have any prizes to give. We're on a budget. But welcome aboard. A lot of you on Facebook as well. We're on X and Twitter and YouTube and Twitch for you gamers out there as well. And, of course, on the Wave Weather app. We're available, the news app. And behind me, which you can't even see from this camera angle, but I do have, at the moment, TikTok is running behind me. Be Good WX, Be Good Weather. I am live right now for a more behind-the-scenes look of this room, and I know it's not a very flattering shot. You got to stare at my behind the whole time here, so I'm sorry. But at least you get an idea. If you want to bring up both streams of the live feed from the app and TikTok, that way you kind of get a full perspective of what it's like in this room and how I can sometimes stress out, even when I'm not on camera. You may not see that. All right, so anyway, welcome aboard, everyone. A lot to cover, so let's dive into one of the most important things, as I think a lot of you would agree with, and that is the countdown to fall. Oh, we're there, right at the 40-day mark. As I said many times before, once you get under 40 and certainly under 30, then it gets really exciting. And that's where you start paying attention. Can't really see a lot of the weather patterns, at least daily weather patterns yet to this time period. I can get to about Labor Day right now. And as you're about to see coming up, I mean, it is going to get quite active the end of August into September. And I do think we're going to see several more fronts coming our way to where September could be an interesting month for us. And I know you're like, anytime other people say interesting, it always ends up getting wild. But it's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just going to be simple in saying it looks interesting. We'll come back around to that. Today, not exactly an interesting day, right? Kind of gloomy out there. We had some downpours last night. I'm sure you may have heard some of that thunder. It may have interrupted some of your evening plans. Some got a good amount of rain, and some were indeed missed. All right, so here's the rainfall estimates from the radar in the past 24 hours. And notice areas in darker green, that's where estimates are of about an inch of rain that did fall. And that was pretty close to the I-64 corridor. The I-65 zone was not as saturated with heavy downpours. The northern and southern parts really got missed a bit. So it was really along the Ohio River and certainly back into the Wabash and back into St. Louis. Even had some producing some small hail yesterday as they were approaching our western counties last night. Closer view into the metro, anywhere you see yellow indicates radar estimates of 2 inches. Now orange gets closer to 4. I don't know if anyone got a measurement of 4 inches. I mean, sometimes these are happening where there's not gauges. But if you have your home gauge, some of you, I think it was it Kirk or Chris? Chris, you posted your rain totals in northern Kentucky. How much did you say? Let's see, half inch to a little more than 3/4 last night. Yeah, and the lightning too was quite prolific there for a while. Quite the show for sure. But notice in Jefferson County alone, if you're in the East End, Oldham County, Shelby County, you got a decent amount of rain. But around Mount Washington, Okolona, into Highview, even parts of Fern Creek, down into Shepherdsville, and even into parts of downtown and the around the Taylor Berry neighborhood and heading towards Shively. There really wasn't as much in the way of rainfall compared to other areas that we saw. So it was very, very blotchy. Now, we do have a chance to get more downpours today. I do not see a repeat of what we had last night and yesterday afternoon, where we had a little more action to track on the radar, right? Today will be a tamed down version for one of the reasons, as you just saw briefly on the SkyTri camera, we're cloudy. So we're not expecting a lot of sun here today, so that's going to be one ingredient that's going to be missing. Two, the front is losing its image on the weather map. It's still here. It's right out the door, actually. But it's hard to define it anymore. It's very, very weak, and it will linger until it completely disintegrates basically off the map, which will happen probably, I would say, by Thursday night or Friday. We should see it fade off the map altogether. But until then, it's at least something. it's at least some type of boundary in the area that could still fire off 1 or 2 downpours. So all is not lost if you've been missed as of late, but I would not expect a widespread rainfall, which unfortunately means the heat is going to be really tough here this weekend. Here's a look at the satellite looking from space. A lot of clouds over Kentucky. There have been a few more breaks, maybe a little closer to southern Indiana near Louisville, but central Kentucky fairly locked in on the clouds. And the front, if I had to draw it on the map, which it's, again, hard to do because it is relatively diffuse, the front is roughly right along the parkways area, give or take a row of counties. So that's generally what we're looking at today. Again, the lack of sun for a while anyway will keep things off to a quieter start. Once we get some sun, that'll be enough to fire things up, and we'll get some scattered showers and some thunderstorms later on for this afternoon. But as far as deep tropical moisture, you need that as well to provide for some decent downpours. Yesterday's rainfall rate got up to about 2.1 inches per hour, I believe. So, I mean, that's up there. That's a decent rainfall rate, very tropical-like downpours. Today, where we're going to find that is going to be in that really dark shade of green, almost bluish color. So that's been pushed down more into southern and southeast Kentucky, certainly down in Tennessee, and certainly into the Carolinas. But you don't have as much of that signal showing up a little further to the north. Into our area. So that's the reason why that even if we were to get some downpours, I don't think there's going to be a ton of heavy rainfall. Would you say, Shonda, lightning was crazy here too? It didn't get much rain in Jeffersonville though. Yeah, that's how it was in my house. A lot of thunder, spooky looking clouds, kind of an eerie sunset period, right? Where you could tell something was a little off outside because you knew it wasn't quite to sunset yet it got really dark. So it was like the tease of a thunderstorm, but it really didn't build all the way down in the areas that probably needed it more. Adam, over into Bloomington. There's a loud thunder and wild lightning yesterday around 4 p.m. Yeah, that cell yesterday for you guys produced the eventual flash flood warning too. So 0.72, you did fairly well, Adam, compared to what some of your neighbors did in that area, where over 2 inches of rain was reported. Okay, so where are we going to go from here? Well, here's the first off the extreme rainfall outlook, or a better way to word this is the flash flooding risk today. It's there, but it's focused a little more south and more so into Kentucky than Indiana, and it's in the mountains because of orographic lift. You run into a lot more of issues of mudslides, that kind of thing, because of terrain, so it's more of a problem for areas where you got a bit of a spin like this. You get that tropical moisture that goes up the Appalachians like that. It can lead to very heavy rainfall and runoff, so they run into more of an issue with that. But anyway, here locally, the game plan for us, using just our in-house model, which I think is done fair with this. They don't always do great, but get you on the same page anyway on the storyline, right? Spotty downpours this afternoon. It really likes the Louisville area again. Tries to pop them around 3, 4 o'clock, somewhere around, well, I didn't mean to move that, sorry. Right around the Louisville area. But in general, I think it's going to be a focus over Kentucky that you will see the clusters of showers and storms. We have a modest amount of shear today, about 20 knots, which is not that much. Again, benchmark for severe that I look for is roughly around 40. Now, that's given a typical severe weather scenario. 40 knots is good enough. But you can still get severe thunderstorm warnings even with 30 knot shear if you got the heat to also aid in that. And in downburst potential, you can run into that problem, even some small hail. But today, I think the wind fields are they're even weaker than yesterday. We don't have as much sun as we had yesterday. So there's a lot going against anything on the strong side, and therefore, hopefully, that will cut back on any flash flooding risk for today. It's all about the repeating nature now. Do you get more than one? If you do, then yeah, okay, your totals could be a little impressive. If you just get one, you're looking at maybe a quarter inch type of setup. Not a lot. Okay, so then the rain continues tomorrow. Low wind rain chance. The front, again, still there. Some of this is just your random pop-ups, but, oh, look, it's Mickey Mouse. Just your random pop-ups, but majority of the action will be down here in southern areas of the Commonwealth, okay? Really, we continue the storyline into Friday, but even on Friday, we lose the front even more. So it's barely even on the map. So Friday really should be our day that we transition into a hotter scenario coming our way. Marty, wicked lightning last night in J-Town. Yeah. If you got pictures, guys, I always try to show photos of anything, your dogs, your pets, something funny that you captured outside when you're out, lightning, rainbows, whatever it is you find, you can always submit that on the Wave Weather app, but please submit it on the Wave Weather app because it's a lot easier for me to get it to show. And every day at 3 o'clock when I'm with Myra, we pick out the good photo of the day. And I have one picked out for today, but I need other slots to fill. So if you find anything wild and unusual, just make sure it's your photo and submit away and share with the weather community here. And I would love to highlight those. And that includes you guys too watching behind me on TikTok right now. You guys at home can't see, but they're there. Is anybody watching both streams right now? If you are, let me know. And hopefully I'm not blocking anything too important. I don't think you can see much that far back. But anyway, submit those in, Marty, and I would love to see them. Okay. Everyone looks fine? Good. All right. So what's happening next? Well, you guys know the heat, right? The heat's going to be building in, and that will be the big headline for the weekend. Before I get to that, I do want to update you guys on what has been developing here with, of course, Aaron. And this has been getting a lot of attention for a while. So where do we stand with this tropical storm? Well, it's still in the Atlantic, chugging along fairly quick to the west. A little more defined today. It's a little bit further away from that dust shield that was there. I'll show you the dust map in a second. So it's kind of stretching its legs, breaking free. It is worth noting there are other tropical waves that are trying to come off the coast of Africa. I'll come back to that in a second, but I do think the additional waves that come in from Africa, I do think need to be watched and could be sneaky. Everyone's focused on Aaron, but we got to pay attention to what the storyline is showing down the road as Aaron taking a likely turn into the Western Atlantic. Because of that track and the speed may very well affect how these other systems behave as they head through the Caribbean. So there's a lot to watch for the rest of August into early September, but I'll circle back to that in a second. Looking just mainly at Aaron, there's the morning shot. This is from space right here. This is, other than the banner you see at the top of the screen, everything you're looking at is if you were on the International Space Station looking down, this is basically what you would see, just a little higher up. Look at the sun rise. I always love that. You see the sun right there when it passed over the ocean there at that perfect angle. But what a pretty shot of Aaron this morning. Fairly compact. I mean, big circulation, right? But compact. But what matters is you get thunderstorms in the center. The center of the spin, if you look carefully, the center of the spin is about here. So it's a little lopsided at the moment, and the thunderstorms reflect that as well. Once they start to fill in more around the center of it, and it becomes much more of a circular image of red or enhanced on these color tops, that's when you start to get a good sign. This thing's getting organized, and a hurricane would not be long away. It wouldn't take long at all to get a hurricane to develop, and that's the game plan with Aaron. Now, the dust side of things, again, it's pulling away from some of that dust it had off the coast, but there is another batch near the islands. I don't think it's enough to cause a major disruption because right now we're thinking it's going to go barely in the northern side of that dust field. So there may be a slight stall on its organization. Once it gets to hurricane status, though, it's not as a problem. Dust is not as huge a factor as in the stage when it's trying to form. Dust can really impact that phase of a tropical system and really keep that process prolonged. Once it's established and it's running, it's going, it's got the machine churning, it's got the engines ready to go, going through something like that is a relatively minor issue because it's already got the framework done. So once it heads to the west, the same issue is at play. How far north of the islands will it go, and when does it turn? Because we still see that there is a weakness between the two highs. Sounds like that show, was it Zach, how do you say, Galifianakis? I can never say his name right. Was The Man Between Two Ferns? Was it the name of the show? Am I really showing my age? You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking of every time I say the path between two highs. But anyway, that's what we'll be tracking. And this will be this weekend and early next week that Aaron will be a little closer. So let's run through the stats. Here we go. This was as of this morning. We'll have another update in about 55 minutes. Still a tropical storm heading west at 45 miles per hour. Now here's where it becomes, again, a major hurricane as it gets into the island chain, and then we start to see that turn. But at that point, we got to see how strong it is. Forecast to be at Cat 3 at that point. And if it is getting stronger and stronger, we should see that obvious turn to the right we've been talking about to get not only into the westerlies, that strong westerly wind belt that exists, but also the weakness in the two highs. It'll find a way to try to hide, if you will, and it may find its way. The data and the guidance on this does fairly well in this kind of a scenario, so I think this is fair of a track from everything I've seen so far. It's just going to be nerve-wracking for those in the islands, Puerto Rico even, certainly Bermuda. Poor Bermuda, not in a good spot right now for Bermuda to be in that area, but they're fairly used to it, sadly. They deal with this a lot, but this one's going to be a bit of a beast here to track. Now, I mentioned that second wave, maybe a third, that is showing up behind this. Why does that matter? Well, if it forms way to the south, which a couple of them are hinting they would, it would likely maintain itself decently. But if it takes a similar path to what Aaron did, what Aaron is doing right now is a process called upwelling. It is taking the colder water that is underneath all that warm layer, and it's not really cold, it's cooler, the cooler water underneath that warm ocean, Caribbean water there, and it flips it, it turns it upside down, just like you would if you were trying to do a mix and bake a cake. Because of the upwelling, it will cause any wave in its path to struggle. It'll have a tough time organizing. So I think if there is a secondary wave that follows a similar path, it will likely be really tough to know what's happening with it. It'll be very weak, a tropical low type thing. But once it gets into an area where it's away from wherever Aaron went, then that water is untouched. Then you would see a rapid development. My fear is that this scenario would play out, but unfortunately at this point it's a lot closer to us, right? It would be much more of a threat to the lower 48 because it'll intensify rapidly at the last minute, getting the headlines when everyone's still watching Aaron make its journey. So we got to pay attention to what's behind Aaron too and see. Let's hope it stays in the upwelling path and that cooler path there for a while. But the danger in that is, again, it can emerge and get into a sneaky rapid development a little closer to the United States. And that would still be about more than a week and a half away. So it's a long way off. I'm purely speaking on pattern recognition here in theory of what I've seen play out like this before. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but that's why you're here on the blog, right? To hear all these potentials that we talk about. So that's one thing I'm watching. The ensembles or the spaghetti plots, by the way, for Aaron, yeah, decent. I mean, they obviously agree on it going west. And the degree of turn, which is common that far out in time, uncertainty increases the further out in time you go, obviously. So there is a bit more of a wider range of when that turn will happen. So it could even go all the way and just, I mean, scoot so close to the United States and still turn. That's not landfalling, right? Would it still cause impacts for the lower 48? Yes. How does that happen? Well, two things. One, you would get a very strong rip current set up for the Carolinas and the beaches. Swimming would be a challenge, probably put out the flags if you have vacation plans in the next week or so along the East Coast, but especially for the Carolina beaches. It may be a point where rip currents may be too strong, you may not be able to even swim, so heads up on that. Secondly, as I've mentioned before, these things are heat engines. And when they travel in this area and turn, when they get closer to the land masses, there tends to be a lot of sinking air that can happen to the northwest of its track. And this is what I think is going to aid in our heat for sure this weekend. Not directly, but indirectly. I think it will aid in being a very hot setup for the weekend and early next week. And once Aaron makes the pass by the same latitude that we are on here in wave country, that should be when we see the yin-yang effect, and a cold front will then drop. And that will be our relief from the heat. But we've got to get Aaron, up there first to see how that timing will work out. Let me show you a different way of showing this. This is by the Euro. Euro shows the heat dome, pretty established here on Saturday. Here's Aaron, the bottom right of your screen, moving in. I'll advance this. Here we go into Sunday. Now you still see the heat dome over our area. We're still going to go with about 97 right now for a high here in the city. We did get some rain. I don't know if it's enough, though, to be able to shave off those numbers and get us back down to like a 93 or a 94 for a high, which I'm not ruling out. If the ground, we don't have a full sampling yet of how much is going to impact the amount of moisture yet. We're working on that now. If we feel there's been enough rain yesterday, then the highs for the weekend will come down, just letting you know. The heat index will go up, but the actual highs will go down. In an inverse relationship, if we don't feel that there has been enough rain, the 97s that we have out now for this weekend will increase, but the heat index won't be too far from it. At that point, it doesn't matter. Just want to at least let you know why the highs, again, for the weekend may still fluctuate. It's all about the moisture content we've got. But you can see the heat dome is over us on Sunday. There's the other high way over here. Here is the weakness. This is where Aaron will want to go right here, somewhere in that box. So the speed of how quickly it arrives here will determine on which side of this box it will eventually cross through. The Euro likes the idea that it's going to get at least close to Bermuda by the time we get into about next Tuesday. Here is our front that is waiting now, that is developed on the edge of the heat wave. It's ready to drop down. What it's waiting for, though, is that whole yin-yang effect. Once Aaron gets past our latitude, then it's like an opposite reaction happens, and the front will drop down. Watch what happens when I animate this. You see the front, you see Aaron. Now let me advance it, and you see how, boom, there we go. The front drops down to the south, into the Carolinas, in the Tennessee Valley. We get a nice little refreshing, not exactly cold air, but refreshing air out of the heat wave, and then Aaron heads out to sea. What is interesting is I don't think this is going to be overly dramatic on the cool air. It will be dramatic compared to what we will have this weekend, but there is another one that is showing up, because now we may get stuck in this weird loop of tropical systems that will keep trying to move in from the south east, approaching the lower 48, and we're still going to get fronts dropping in from Canada. And I got a feeling we're going to keep seeing this pattern repeat. And that's why I think as we move into September, we may end up with some interesting time periods where we could get some cool weather for the holiday itself, or not the holiday, but at least for September. Here's your entire 10-day. I'll put it up before I head out of here. And again, you can see where we've got 97s intact all the way into the weekend there, including 96 there on Tuesday for a wave day at the fair. And then that's when we're expecting the front to drop in, and the cooler weather drops in behind that. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there for now. Pretty easy going forecast. I'll have more today coming up on midday, and we'll see how things are going to play out when it comes to the highs this weekend. All right, take care, and I'll see you guys coming up on the flip side.